Welcome back to Face the State on this Sunday morning. Ethan Song was 15 years old when he accidentally shot himself using the gun that was owned by the father of a friend. Well, now Ethan's father has proposed a new law with lawmakers. It's called Ethan's Law. And with us today is Mike Song, Representative Vincent Candelora, a Republican, and Sean Scanlon, a Democrat who helped craft the bill. And gentlemen, thank you for being with us here today. And Mr. Song, my condolences for your loss. And we're all, remarkably amazed at what you've been able to do in terms of carrying on Ethan's legacy with this new law. Tell us what led you to, to get this passed.
Well, we felt when this happened, you examine it over and over in your mind. It's like a cycle that never ends. And the more we thought about it, it really always came back to safe storage. So when we began to talk about the fact that this was the driving factor, Ethan had been in 10,000 places. This was the place where he met his end because of unsafely stored guns. And so we started to talk to people, and the first person that really came forward was Sean Scanlon, our representative, and other members of the gun violence prevention community. And we suddenly had something that we could rally around. And it was the first probably bright thing that happened to us in 6 months, because we could really see a pathway through to helping other families not have to endure what we went through.
I think a lot of people didn't even know that we didn't have a law. I know I covered a story 25 years ago, Kyle Hirons, I'll never forget it. He was in Marlboro, I believe, and he shot himself with, a neighbor's gun and things like that. And people wanted to know, why isn't there a law? Mm-hmm. So what led you to get this done?
So right after this incident happened, I told Mike and Kristen, when you're ready, and if you're ever ready to do something about this, I will always be here for you. And about 6 months later, they contacted me during the fall of last year, and we got to work on this. And Vinny was one of the first people I called, because I sort of said from day one, this should be a bipartisan bill. It shouldn't be just Democrats against Republicans. Usually that's how these gun bills work. This is a special case. This is a very common sense thing, and I'm really glad we came together and did it.
There weren't many Republicans who actually voted against it. There were some, but not a lot. How did you persuade them to join you?
Well, I think the first thing we did is we sat down at the table with Second Amendment advocates and with CCDL, with the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, and came together with trying to figure out how we can improve our safe storage laws and accomplish the goals we want to accomplish and make it reasonable.
This law is not a law yet. It's a proposed law, passed the House. Now it goes on to the Senate. What is your message for the senators today?
I would like them to look at the upsweep of bipartisanship. I was so choked up when I started to see Vinny coming into this picture and Sean working with him. It's just nice to see today. So I would say this is a really positive thing. It only is going to benefit everybody. It's a deterrent that we hopefully never have to even prosecute someone on this, because people will say, wait a minute, there's a law, I better lock up my guns because I've got young kids in my home. Almost every responsible gun owner that we bump into, including folks from the CCDL, are really passionate about safe storage. We just think putting some consequences along with that will make the compliance with it much higher and save a lot more lives.
Have you had any conversations with a lawmaker who said, I just can't support this, and did he or she tell you why?
Yeah, we have, and sometimes it has been just a political, for them it might not be politically a good thing for them. We are seeing more and more people saying, wait a second, people do want this. It's one of those issues in this area of gun violence that people are getting behind. So I haven't really heard a great issue. Sometimes people say, well, my constituents say they need to get to their gun real fast. But we've been demonstrating for the last 6 months that the new gun safes are literally like your smartphone. You can open them with one tap of your finger. So that argument's starting to melt away, and we're seeing more and more people excited about this.
Representative Scanlon, your colleagues in the Senate, what are they telling you about this, and what's its likelihood or defeat or passage?
I expect the margin will be very similar to the House. I think that it'll be overwhelming. There'll be some people that might vote against it, but I think there's broad bipartisan support for this. I know the governor has indicated to the Song family personally that he will sign this bill. So my advice to them is just do this quickly. Let's get this done, and let's show a bipartisan win.
What about your Republican colleagues?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the votes will be similar. Like I said, we've all worked together on a bipartisan basis.
Representative Candelora, did you have someone who voted against it? What did they tell you why?
Well, I think the issue is it's sort of the unknown. When we're extending this law to unloaded weapons, I think there's a concern that there could be sort of inadvertent liability for people who own a gun. But I think that, down the road, it's all going to be about how this law is interpreted and applied. So I think that was really probably the big issue that people who voted no are those inadvertent consequences.
We had a viewer ask us, and I'll ask you gentlemen, perhaps you know the answer to this, but what happens if you leave your gun in your car is stolen, then used in a crime or a murder or something like that? Who's liable?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's potentially one of the examples that there could be an issue. But we already have on the books a law that requires reporting of lost and stolen firearms within 24 hours of knowing you lost your weapon. So I would hope the liability wouldn't extend in those circumstances, because that's a little bit different. You have an intentional act with a theft. The way the safe storage reads, it's really about when you know when kids are in your house. And that's where it really is meant to apply, not in situations of theft. That falls in another area of our statutes.
Mr. Sung, I want to ask you, what should parents do when their child goes to someone else's house? And full disclosure, my son is friends with Representative Gilchrist's son. So when he goes over to her house, what should I be asking her about whether there's a gun in the house?
Well, I think that is one of the most troubling things. So we've bumped into people who were very adamant, NRA members, about how they secure their guns. And then we always ask a follow-up question. What happens when your children go to other people's homes? Kids are very social. I think one thing is to ask them, just to let them know that you would just like to know if there's any unsecured guns in the home. It's something that I ask everybody. It's nothing personal. I do think it's good to ask people that. And of course, I think a lot of people might say, oh yes, everything's locked down tight. And we found in our case, virtually nothing was locked down tight at all, unless you consider a cardboard box secure. So I think it's great to ask, but it's better to also have some consequences that would go with not having your gun secured with kids in the home. And that's why I'm really passionate about Ethan's law.
So this will not be retroactive, and in this case, the gun owner, in your case, cannot be charged? Or
no, I don't believe it will be retroactive, and we're trying to look forward and take a positive path to the future and bring everybody together around something good and wholesome for families, which would be to keep our kids safe.
Well, we thank you very much for sharing your story. Mike Sung, Vincent Candelora, and Sean Scanlon, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
When we come back, we will talk with Corey Brinson, who's attempting a political comeback after a mishap that landed him in prison. Also our flashback, Ella Grasso and the team she loved. Some vintage old video from way back when in our archives. And we welcome you to comment on social media right now. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.